Hey, how's it going, everybody? I'm Jason Rockman. I am here with the Fantasia Film Festival, and I'm going to be hosting this Q&A tonight. And I am so excited about this Q&A. I've been thinking about it all day because I got to see The Spine of Night about a day ago, and this movie has stayed with me. I'm a big fan of animation, as I'm sure a lot of you are here that are joining us tonight. And I'm really excited to welcome to this Q&A Philip Gelatt and Morgan Galen King, both co-directors and writer of the movie The Spine of Night. How are you, gentlemen?
Doing good. Thanks so much for having us and working with us.
I am. I'm really excited about this because being of the, I guess in the age demo that I kind of slide in, this is the kind of animation that I remember really leaving a lasting impression with me as a kid. And it's just so nice to see in the age of everything being computerized and everybody taking the lazy approach, if you will. It's nice to see somebody really bringing back the rotoscope style of animation. So first of all, thank you for being here. I'd really like to talk to dive into a bunch of stuff regarding this movie. But first of all, I'd love to know how you guys met and how this project came about.
Oh man. I guess I'd sort of been toiling on short films for a couple of years. I'd had a record label for a long time that was just very small, and I at some point just was like, I want to do something else with my life. I was like, I'm going to learn how to animate. I'm going to learn how to rotoscope. And I was looking back to I'm sure the same films you were, very nostalgically. I'm a little younger, but I think it just took that long for them to reach small town Virginia, where I grew up.
Yeah.
So I was, I just started working on it and developing a workflow, and eventually made the Exordium short film, which was featured in like a Machinima film festival. Machinima, the thing that I think doesn't exist anymore. But they had a short film festival that it was in, and then I believe someone sent that to Phil.
Yeah, so I saw the Exordium short film and thought that it was awesome. Like it was, I'm a big fantasy fan. Like I'm a fan of the genre, all different subgenres. But when I saw Exordium, it was something like it just was a flavor of fantasy I hadn't seen on screen, I thought, in a long time. And I also was a fan of heavy metal and all the same things.
Yeah.
So I just on a whim, and I was sort of frustrated with my career at the time. I was just like, oh, I'm gonna cold introduce myself to this Morgan guy and see who he is and what we could do together. So I just sent a message. I think I sent him a message on Facebook that was like, hey, I love this movie. It's the coolest thing I've seen all year. Like, who are you? What do you want to do? Let's talk.
It's the dream story, though, right? It's like I'd only really made anything in my living room, and then when for someone to call me, like, I love it. Do you want to make a movie? Is like, it feels like fiction.
And if people don't know, anyone who's on this call, Exordium is the short that pretty much birthed The Spine of Night. So I encourage people to go back and see it if they haven't seen it yet, because it really is. You can see the blueprint of this movie in that short.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So then we started talking about like, I could probably go back and dig up the emails, but I think we sort of batted around a couple of ideas, but very quickly settled on the idea that we would take, as you say, sort of the DNA that was in Exordium, the short film, and build it out into a feature. And so that's what we did. He says as if it was simple, but that's sort of how it started.
There's nothing about this style of filmmaking that's simple. That I know.
Yeah.
The response to this has been really positive across the board. I know it made its premiere tonight at Fantasia, but I was looking at when you guys brought this to South by, and it seems like this movie is getting a little bit of a momentum. Is it weird when you've been working on something, because when you work on something for this long and then it finally gets birthed into the world and people start reacting? Are you nervous? Are you happy? Do you get pissed off?
It's very surreal. I mean, it's the first film I've released. Phil has several wonderful films. But so has been through this ringer more than once. For me, it's like it's so much of me is in it. Like it not only like 7 years of blood, sweat, and tears every waking minute, all the Christmases I didn't go to. It's all like all of that is in there for me, and it's like full of things that maybe don't read as really personal, but like a lot of like I grew up around libraries, so there's a lot of library stuff in there. There's a lot of like political thoughts that were on my mind 7 years ago when we wrote it. And so there's a lot of it's a lot for me. It's hard not to take it personally because it's such a personal work when someone doesn't love it.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, we knew going into it that we were making, I mean, you have to like adult animation, you have to like gory adult animation, and you have to like it in a very specific style that has, always been a little divisive. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's just sort of goes with the territory. So I try to be understanding and not take it too hard.
I don't take it personally at all. As Morgan said, I've had a couple of movies. Actually, no, that's not true. I do take it personally, but I don't pay attention to it, like unless I'm forced to. My wife has a bad habit of, because I don't like to read reviews, but she thinks it's hilarious to read me really bad reviews. So she's like, "Oh, look at what this person wrote. Thanks." Like I don't need to know what that person wrote. Thank you. But I am very excited for people to see it, just because I think, as Morgan said, it's a personal movie, I think, to both of us, and I think it is also like again, coming from a position of loving fantasy genre, I feel like to me this represents, as I said about Exordium, like a type of fantasy that I haven't really seen in a long time, and it's fun, and I hope people like it, or I hope if people don't like it, they at least see it and think to themselves, well, that was something I've never seen before. It wasn't for me, but I haven't seen it before.
I'm curious because when you look at Exordium, and that, I mean, obviously it's like 7 minutes and a bit, but you look at the character, that little journey that the character's on. Did the shift from that character to the lead character that we open up with in The Spine and Night, was there, obviously you're dealing with a male character and then you're dealing with a female character. Was there any kind of a shift? Was there a reason why? Or because if you watch this movie, you realize that these are journeys that people have been on for a long time, and this is something that's going to keep happening. So was there a reason, was there any particular reason why you picked up with a female character to introduce at the beginning of this rather than a male character? Not that I'm just curious if there was any reason that you changed it, or.
I mean, I think the relationship with like hierarchical power structures is like inherently going to have interesting connotations for like patriarchy.
Yeah.
And so it seemed like if we were going to have like someone encounter the bloom with a different experience, whereas in the short film, the guy finds it and he's like, oh, the thing that really matters to me are these like the noble sacrifices people are making on the ground below. And she, I think, comes to it with a really different perspective. Like she's seen it in the wild and seen how it can be good as well.
Right.
Like that the distribution of power and information is really important to her. So that I think there is. I mean, I think the film has a definite streak through it of like anti-hierarchical stuff and like talking about. It's a lot of women interacting with patriarchal systems. So I wanted to do that thematically.
Yeah.
But also, one of the things I wanted to do is like sort of like do a female character that is presented not like a Princess Leia in her, her slave armor from the Jabba's palace, sort of Frazetta style fantasy, which I like that. All brilliant artists, but we thought it'd be really nice to be like, oh, like rather than being cagey about nudity, and female nudity in particular, and how it's like handled within fantasy as a genre, particularly like 70s fantasy.
Yeah.
I love. It felt like an opportunity to be like to desexualize nudity in a way.
Well, that's what I found, and that's what I found so refreshing about it, and that's what. It was kind of nice to see that style, like exactly what you were saying, that style, but not hypersexualized, where the nudity was used in a way where, well, this is just how that tribe would have been dressed. You know, it had nothing to do with, oh, there's these beautiful pair of breasts that are just, you know, scantily, you know, covered by this thin thing to you know, to get some 14-year-old boy excited. This was really used in a way where you could tell that whoever was dealing with, you know, using this bloom in their tribe was using it for all kinds of different reasons. And you see that when she's shacked up with, we find out, one of the bad guys, she uses it right away to heal him.
Yeah.
So I thought it was really neat to see that perspective.
Oh, awesome! I'm glad that came across. It's
oh yeah,
authority, and I think hard to navigate that. You know, it's a fine line to walk.
Yeah, no, and you walk it really well. So, I just want to encourage everyone that's on with us. At the bottom, there's a Q&A button, and if you have any questions that you'd like to ask Philip or Morgan, feel free to just type them in there. We're more than happy to we'd love to actually hear what you all thought of the film, and if you have any questions, because I mean, I personally could sit here and talk to you guys for a couple hours about this movie, but I would like to open it up and allow other people to have, you know,
ready for live bad reviews.
No,
that's a joke. Don't do that.
No, listen, Phil. Whatever your wife did, okay. But it is. Listen, I come from a music background, and there's nothing worse than walking in and reading a review of your album in a magazine. I've had horrible experiences like that, and so I feel you. You know, being a creative, I know what it's like. But it's actually kind of fun in a way. Like, there's nothing worse than YouTube comments. I mean, YouTube comments.
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea of, like, even if someone didn't like it, that we like still shared a moment in a way. Like, they still spent time with us, or you know, in our heads and with our thing, even if they're like, wasn't for me. Like, we still like got to spend 93 minutes together doing something in a way.
Totally. All right, we got a question from Terry. Terry says, I love the movie, heavy influence of heavy metal. What inspiration of the movie and the books that you look into? I guess he's asking what books and what movies inspired you.
I mean, heavy metal, I mean, I think for sure. Although the more I think about it as the film has been out, it's like the parts that I really love. I mean, I love all of heavy metal, but the parts I really love are like the Tarna segment at the end. It's a little more elegiac, or like the horror in the B-17 section. Those are always my favorites. And I realize sometimes when we're comparing the film to heavy metal that somebody definitely wants the Sammy Hagar and cocaine snorting aliens. And we did not do that part.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, I love that stuff, but it wasn't the heavy metal we made.
And I mean this no offense to heavy metal, which obviously I love dearly. I have a huge collection of the magazines right there at my feet. But
if it didn't have the green screen up, that's all heavy metal posters.
We often said when we were making the film that we were trying to make something like heavy metal that we wouldn't, and again, it sounds like an insult, but that we wouldn't be embarrassed to show people. Like, because there's a little bit of embarrassment when you're like, hey, I love this heavy metal thing, and then you show it to them and it's cocaine snorting aliens, and you know, it's stuff that you know is a little bit, you know, for the wrong audience, makes you cringe a little bit. So yes, heavy metal was certainly an influence. Morgan, do you want to talk about now the name is escaping me. What's the book that you always reference?
A Canticle for Leibowitz.
Thank you. Yes.
Walter M. Miller Jr.'s book was a huge influence on this. It was one of my father's favorite books, and he passed it on to me at some point. He's like, you're going to love this. And it completely blew my mind in that and I think the structure of that is very similar to this, where it's like you see like the book's broken up into thirds, and there's huge time jumps between each one, and you sort of see just the echoes of what came before. There's a lot of threads that just sort of dissipate out, and you don't know how they landed, because it's all about like sort of like the broken chain of knowledge. And like the very premise of the book is basically that a post-apocalyptic monastic order is built out of someone just found Leibowitz's grocery list, and that's all they have. So they rebuild the entire world out of just this. And it's just an incredible work. And I think of any book that really influences Spine of Night, it is that, like this sort of drifting through time anthology.
Well,
for sure.
and when you talk about the time jumps, yeah, and I gotta say, doing time jumps in any genre can be it can be tough sometimes to convince people, but I found these were really fluid and they really worked well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think
we had concerns.
What's that? What's that, Philip?
No, just it one of our concerns creatively and editorially up to the very last minute was whether those time jumps were going to play for people. So it's nice to hear you say that they played well for you. Because
very well. Yeah,
it's good.
All right, we have another question from John Cutter. It says, "Love the movie. Having been raised on Bakshi and heavy metal, it brought back that wild sense of visual imagination midway between reality. But my question is, do you see this rotoscoping technique as a possible ongoing venture into greater visual storytelling?"
I guess I don't know if he means for us specifically or for like adult animation as a whole. I think there's an inherent limitation because it is so time consuming. When I've told this story a couple of times over interviews, but when we were first, we were about a year into the project, and my wife and I went to get coffee, and it was one of those coffee shops where there's a bookshelf of just books to browse while you're waiting, and there's like a introduction to animation book, and I was like, oh, this will be cute, and I flipped through that, and there's like a couple of pages on rotoscoping, and the first sentence was, don't rotoscope a feature-length film unless you're serving a long prison sentence. And I was like, well, we've served 1 year, so I think there is something to that, but it also, I mean, we still, even though it took a long time, we did do this with essentially 3 animators, as opposed where Bakshi would have had 75 or 100, and so so I think the technology is advanced enough that we can do a lot with with smaller crews. So if we had 10 people, it wouldn't be so arduous. But also the technology is moving really fast. I don't think it's there yet, but a couple of years from now, I love it hand drawn. I think you don't ever want to lose the appeal to me of this is the hand drawn quality.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But there are definitely like time saving things that could be done with all the deep fake technology, and like there's EB Synth is this one program that a lot of people are using to make comedy videos on TikTok or whatever. So I think that it doesn't look great, but it's advancing. So I think it has the potential to really open this up to independent people doing smaller, weirder projects that could have some kind of renaissance.
Cool. Go ahead, Phil.
Oh no, I just agree. Smaller and weirder is my preference for things in general. So I hope it does. Yes.
Yeah. Terry has another question. He said, the score was great, sets the mood of the movie as well. The passage of the tales. What music influenced the score for this movie?
So that's a tricky question. I mean, we started with a lot of temp score that was a little bit more guitar driven and a little bit more drone-y. And
so much drone.
And then eventually, as the film reached its completion, we moved on to find the actual composers we worked with. I mean, it was always one of the ideas to help with that transition, those time jumps, to have different composers do the music for the different sections of film. So, there is a bit of an evolution of the sound of the film from the first section, kind of a more traditional score, into, I don't know what you would call Knit Her. What do you call that?
I think they call themselves avant folk.
Avant folk, yes.
Yeah.
And then eventually into Dungeon Synth, which is this whole amazing world of, I lovingly call them weirdo synth artists who love dark fantasy and Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. So we worked with a number of them, and they were fantastic. But I mean, in terms of core musical inspiration, it was kind of just whatever we thought was cool. Just a really shallow answer, but that's kind of where we started.
No, it's honest. I mean,
There's definitely intentionality of like making each section sound different. But I mean, I think you definitely see Peter Scartabello, who did a ton of great work on the film. Did I mean you can? I hear a lot. I'm sure we said at some point we want to evoke the feeling of the Conan score, the classic Conan score.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, that actually that's great. Now when you say that, I'm like, oh yeah, I can definitely.
Yeah, once you know that, if you listen back to it, there's a couple of beats. They're like, oh yeah, that's just almost exactly Conan, just off a little bit, but it's in there. You will hear it.
Yeah, the bones are there.
Yeah.
There's an impressive voice cast. We've talked about the story, we've talked about the animation, but yeah, well, Terry's asked another question. That's exactly what I'm going to ask. How did you manage to get the voice actors on your project? So let's talk a little bit about the voice actors, because these are, we've got some heavy hitters that are involved with this project. I'd love to hear the stories of how they came on, if there's any stories of, anything about them, because let's face it, and maybe if you want to tell some of everybody there's some really, really great people in this.
Yeah, so I can tell you the story of how we got all of them. So we started, when we shot live action, obviously, and none of our famous people, with one exception, was there for the actual filming of the live action. Many years later, when the animation was almost completed, we went back and cast the sort of bigger names. And the first big name we cast was Joe Manganiello, because I just figured he loves D&D and he loves sort of extreme fantasy artwork.
He's a massive nerd.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
It's great.
Yeah. So we sent him the movie and a little letter that was like, hey, you might dig this. Do you want to play this mongrel character? And he was like, yeah, great, let's do it. So he was the first person. And recording with him was fantastic. He really, it was a blast to watch him. We bring him into an ADR booth, and there's no need for him to act out combat, but he did, because when you voice a barbarian, you have to act like a barbarian. So it was fantastic. And so we did his voice before COVID, so I got to be in the actual ADR session with him.
Nice.
The next person we cast was Patton Oswald, who plays Parenton, who's like a simpering man boy king in the film. And there was a similar logic, just that we knew that he liked nerdy stuff. And he also said yes, which was really amazing. And then Lucy Lawless, who plays the lead, I guess this is the point where I'm gonna stop the story and say I was deeply starstruck by all of these people. So it was like really awkward for me to have to direct them. Lucy and Richard E. Grant, I think, where I was the most starstruck by. I mean, Lucy Lawless is genre royalty in a way that I think few actresses are. Really. So I was first stunned that she would come on, and then she was just so much fun to work with. Like, she brought such intelligence and thought to the character, from the emotionality to the accent and all that kind of stuff. But it was weird because that we recorded during COVID, so that was me here in Rhode Island and her in New Zealand in a sound studio, like basically like I'm talking to you as well.
Right. Yeah.
Which was, it's one thing to be sort of starstruck by Lucy and work with her in person. It's another thing to do it remotely in this weird sort of, Zoom world that we live in.
Yeah.
And then Richard E. Grant, I don't know if you love him as much as I do, but I think that he's so fantastic.
Oh God, come on, yeah.
He's just amazing. And he was great. We had to record his whole part twice, because the first time we did it, also during COVID, we sent him a microphone, and he was in France doing something. So we sent him a microphone and tried to set up, his wherever he was, such that he could record the part properly. And we did the whole performance once, and then we got the sound files from him and turned them into our sound engineers, and they're like, "Yeah, this isn't going to cut it. You're going to have to make him do it again."
All right, hey, wait. Let me stop you there.
Yeah.
How do you? Okay. Yeah. Call Richard E. Grant and say, because I'm sure you're already like, oh my God, we got him. Oh my God, we got him. High fives all around. Yeah. You get the files, and then your sound guy said, how do you call him and go,
this is where I confess that I didn't have to do that part of it. I made our other producer, Will, write the email to Richard and ask him, please, if he would if he would come. I mean, we were very kind about it. At that point he was back in London, and we asked him, because he's done so much work in London, we asked him like what his favorite sound studio to work at is, and could we schedule it there, and could we buy him a fancy car, and could we make it. But even still, that recording session, I was definitely like, this guy hates me. I don't think he does. I think I was just projecting, but I mean, and he came in and gave, if anything, an even better performance than he had the first time. So it all worked out fine.
Well, of course, because he probably, the material more, but
I mean, they're all supremely professional actors, but I think of all of them, he is the most practiced and has been around the most, and like worked in the most varieties of projects. I mean, he's just like an absolute pro and a supremely fantastic human being. So it was fine. I don't think he hates me. I hope I say.
Well, let's you gotta. I hope you guys did something nice for Will after that one, because
I haven't yet, but maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Well, if Will ends up watching this, Will, I'm telling the guys, man. But yeah, that I would not want to make that.
Although,
call.
yeah. So actually, the other weird thing about Richard Grant was I had to do a similar thing with Patton. I needed him to re-record a couple of lines, and so I emailed him. It's all sort of like Hollywood nonsense, but I tried to go through his managers and it wasn't getting a response. So I was finally just like, okay, I have to bite the bullet and just email him personally and say, can you redo these lines? Which I did. And then, it was fine. So I got on that call with him, and it was before we had recorded with Richard. So I found myself in this strange position where I was saying to Patton Oswalt, who I was vaguely starstruck by, I'm very starstruck by Richard E. Grant, because it's weird to talk to somebody who you've watched your whole life and then have to talk to in person. And then I tagged onto it, kind of like how I'm having to do this with you right now. And he was like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Like we're all nerds. We all sat at the same table in high school. So it was
that's
weird
great
to confess starstruckness to about one star to another star. So, but I should say the one person who was there when we shot live was Betty Gabriel, who is in Get Out. And so we recorded with her. She came and did the live action motion capture right after she graduated from Juilliard, went on to be in Get Out, and is amazing. She did re-record her own dialogue. We sent her a microphone, and she crammed herself into this tiny little closet to get the sound right, and it turned out perfectly. But it was, an amazing ability to act crammed into it wasn't even a closet, it was like an armoire. It was amazing. So kudos to Betty.
Now, without, you don't have to name anyone, but were there any horror stories with any voice actors on this, or was everything great?
The only horror story is my chagrin at having to ask people to redo things. Like that's,
and I mean, having to ask Richard E. Grant, that's pretty horror story-ish. That gets the gold star.
Yeah.
All right, we have another question. Might we see more story of the Bloom and other tales from it? And what is your next project? And that was a question I was going to ask.
Yeah. Morgan, please.
Well, it's certainly something we've been discussing. I've had 7 years of drawing this to think about, other things like, oh, it would be interesting to explore this, or here would be another angle on this world that would be interesting to engage with. So, I mean, certainly, we've got notes and ideas and things. I think it'll really depend on, what the reception is like, and if someone wants to give us enough money to hire a team bigger than 3 people, so that we're done before I'm dead. So,
if you would like more tales of the Bloom and stories from this world, then we would love to make them. So go ahead and tell everybody to see the movie, and hopefully we can do more.
Yes,
we definitely have ideas. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I guess we should share the news. I mean, this will be playing at Fantasia, and so this will be on demand, so people can watch this for the duration of the festival. But you guys have been, you guys are going to be on Shudder, which is a great accomplishment for you, because this is, let's face it, a lot of people that do attend Fantasia are probably subscribers to Shudder. This is going to open this up for it's going to open it up for tons of people to enjoy this.
Yeah, and it's super exciting. I mean, I was, like I said, I really only I subscribe to just 2 streaming services, and one is Shudder and one is Criterion. And I think this movie exists right in that. I'd like to think it's right in the middle ground.
Yeah, I was going to say,
yeah,
that's vaguely presumptuous. But
highbrow and
Yeah.
like, yeah.
Yeah. So, we'll be, it's just only a matter of time. But the.
Have you, Morgan, have you already designed the box art for your Criterion release? Or?
I've done a lot of conceptual art for what this film could look like in a package form. That is true. Yes. So we'll see. I don't know what our contractual obligations are in terms of that, but someday, 20 years from now. Yeah, I'm excited. I think Shudder's going to be perfect. I think it's exactly the audience that will love this. So
yeah, 100% agree.
What in terms of the journey of this movie, what's next for it besides Shudder? Is there a stop along the way between Fantasia and Shudder? Do you have more stuff coming up?
Yeah, so it will have a theatrical release, like a small theatrical release, October 29th.
Okay.
But I don't know, we don't yet know where yet, some manner of theatrical release. Before that, we play in a couple of festivals. I can't remember what they are, but I'm sure look it up. We're playing Beyond, the Beyond Festival. We're playing Telluride Horror, and there's a couple of others that I'm not sure. So yeah, then theatrical, and then it'll be on Blu-ray, and then Shudder sometime next year.
I can imagine this must be a great experience in an actual cinema on the big screen. This must be a mind-blowing experience.
Neither Morgan or I have had that experience yet.
Really?
So,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is this? Have you guys already discussed trying to meet somewhere to see it together in a theater? Or?
Yeah, I mean the international travel with the pandemic makes it all a little complicated, but we're certainly trying to figure something out. Maybe Beyond. We'll see.
Yeah.
And lastly, just in terms of I know we touched on it a bit. These stories, I could see these stories, like the stories of the Bloom, could come. Yes, we could see them in a movie format or maybe in a short format. But would you ever consider maybe bringing this into the comic book world, into the graphic novel world? Because that could be a way to do it. That could be maybe a little less gut wrenching on you, Morgan.
I did in the week between finishing the short film Exordium and Phil contacting me, started drawing a comic book, thinking maybe that this would take a little less time. So I've had that as an idea for something that I think would be fun. I've always dreamed of I had bought from a flea market in 1984 this big stack of Savage Sword of Conan, the black and white magazine sized ones, and I just absorbed those as a kid, which probably shows up in the film.
Yeah.
But so something like that I thought would be really fun. But I guess the interest would have to be there, but it'd be a fun way to work for sure.
Oh yeah, I mean, I could, and just the nature of the nature of the story. I mean, there are probably so many stories that involve the Bloom that left to be discovered, and I could see that even though we have a small group, but I could see that being a question that you're going to be getting a lot more as more eyeballs come to this project. We want more, so that's a good problem to have.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, if we can make it happen, I'm amenable. So yes, that'd be wonderful.
So I just want to let people know, if you guys have any more questions for Philip or Morgan, feel free to put them in the Q&A box down at the bottom. I don't want to keep you guys too long because I know you probably guys have a lot more going on and you got a lot of stuff happening. But I did want to invite people if anybody wanted to ask any more questions, we do have the Q&A box open. Please feel free to jot your questions down there, and I'll be more than happy to get them across. Have you guys had a chance to look around at the Fantasia programming and dove in and watched some stuff yourselves?
Oh yeah. What have I seen? I've seen a lot. I've tried to watch a couple of things every day since.
Okay, so you guys, so not only are you participants, you are fanning out a bit.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's half the reason I've been excited about this. Our email threads will confirm that I've been nagging everyone about making sure I got my Fantasia passes this entire time.
That same wife who reads me my bad reviews has been dying to come to Fantasia since we got married. And then I know, irony of ironies, the 1 year that I have a movie at Fantasia, it's virtual, so we can't come.
Man.
But yeah, I mean, I love this festival. It's fantastic. So absolutely.
It really, really. So what have you seen that's jumped out at you that you really enjoyed?
I just watched Frank and Zed, and I thought that was an absolute blast. I loved so much about it. I think it's a similar project of sort of a kindred spirit. You know, it took him 6 years to do his gory fantasy puppet epic. There's the animation showcase was the first thing I watched, and that's full of awesome things. That Sunbelly, the short that closes that out, is just has this incredible organic aesthetic. Like you're looking at, like it feels like you're looking at a CRT monitor under the hood of an old arcade cabinet. It just has the I love that. Like that, I watched Junkhead. I thought that was really good. I had just started Hellbenders today, but I didn't quite make it through before I had to start doing work, and now my thing is expired. So I'm looking forward to seeing the rest of that.
Also on Shudder.
Also coming to Shudder, I hear. So, those are the ones that really stick out. But it's everything I've watched has been awesome.
Yeah. And Philip, what about you?
I've kind of been following Morgan's recommendations, to be honest. So I haven't not branched out much farther than that. I'm sorry to say. But yeah.
I'm really looking forward to Mad God. I think that's going to be amazing. And the CN Sono one with Nick Cage is going to be.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Very, very looking forward to that.
When is Mad God available to watch?
Next week. I'd have to look at my calendar.
So it's nice to see that not only you have a film playing here, but you guys are fans too. So I think that comes across in the authenticity of the piece you're presenting too, because you can tell this is a labor of love, and these are two people that really, really love this genre. So
yeah, I mean, for better or worse, I mean, we went into this completely uncynically. I think it really is like a. I mean, there was no. Sometimes I read people who like don't quite get the genre we're doing, and they're like, "We're not sure who this is for." And I always think it's a really interesting question, because like that was never considered when we were doing this. Like it was for us, and for people who want to like it, and it was so. Yeah,
it's for you and a bunch of crazy Montrealers. But I hope we win converts. My hope is that among the many people who see it and are like, I do not get what this is, there's like one or two who are like, I did not know I needed this in my life, but I'm so glad.
And that's the thing. I think that people that might not be familiar with this type of storytelling need to sit and watch it, because let's face it. I mean, what you did here is very specific, and there's not a lot of people doing it. So, and there's got to be right off the bat, there's respect given to it, because I know how much work goes into this. So, and on top of it, when it's actually good, that makes it all that much more enjoyable. So, I just want to give you guys a tip of the hat. I thought I really, really enjoyed it, and I think everyone that was involved tonight enjoyed it too. So, thanks for giving us a bit of a behind the scenes on the making of this, and what all the stories that went into putting this together. And again, a continued success. And I'd love to see more stories of the Bloom. So please, if you can make it happen, make it happen.
Okay, awesome. We will.
Everything we can. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's so great to hear it connects with anybody. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.